All right, guys, you can see I'm out in the shop today, and we are dealing with some extreme heat here in Kentucky. It's supposed to be like crazy heat indexes today, but it's July. You know, what do you expect? We're going into the month of August here before long. Mid-July, it always gets hot here in Kentucky. And it is Bassmaster Junior and Bassmaster High School Nationals week. The junior is this week, the end of this week, and then the high school will follow up next weekend. They're out of Paris Landing, so they're on the south end of the lake compared to where I'm at. But I've had, before the cutoff, I had several of you guys that went out with me, and I wanted to hop on here real quick and just give everyone an update on kind of what's going on out here, what to expect this week. Now, I have often said in the past, I don't understand. There's got to be a reasoning for the scheduling and school starting back, or something to do with why we picked this month of July to have this tournament, because it is extremely tough. I've shared that with some of you, and that hasn't changed. We're dealing with some extreme heat temperatures this week, and water temperatures, you know, they're 90 degree, close to 90 degrees, in that high 80 mark, surface temp. So first and foremost, remember, fish are going to come up when that surface temperature gets that warm. Those fish, when that water starts to turn over late in the summer like this, is when those fish start coming up. So not every fish in the lake is going to go deep. I'm starting to see a lot of fish that are coming up on top of the flats and ledges. They're going to get up on top of that stuff, sometimes even in that 6 foot range, 6 to 8 foot range. Now, if you followed bass fishing for any time at all, I often refer back to, I've seen some of the, back when we had the Forest Wood Cup in the FLW days, there were a lot of late summer events that were won in super shallow water. Now, that may have been on different lakes other than the Tennessee River, but fish typically go shallow again in the summer. Now, when I say shallow, a lot of people always ask, you know, are they all swimming into the creeks? No, not necessarily, but they'll get up on top of the flats. They'll hang high in that water column. If there's any fresh trees in the water, that green from those leaves holds oxygen. That's why a lot of locals will put out, they'll put out like tops, brush late in the summer like this, and it pulls that bait. What it does is that the oxygen around those green leaves attracts the bait, and then therefore the fish pull up behind it. Now, in recent years, and then this year, we've had some late afternoon thunderstorms coming through. And what that does is, a lot of times, if you'll take the time to run around out there and you can find those laydowns, look for those green trees. If you find a green tree that's in the water, it'll have 3 bass around it. Every single one of them will have a few bass around it. Swim jig. You can pitch a Senko or something, you know, finesse up around that stuff. A topwater even, you know, if fish are active. But you can usually pull up any kind of shallow cover this time of year. If there's a lay down in the water, stake beds, docks, you know, late summer, fish get up under docks. You know, there's a lot of patterns that are going to play the next couple of weeks here. And it's not all about just ledge fishing. Now, that being said, some of the better quality is still out on the ledges, and that'll continue to be that way even through the month of August. Now, dog days of summer, it's hot. Like I say, fish are going to start coming up. I'm going to talk about just a few baits. I've got several things laid out here. I'll talk briefly on just a few on things that could possibly work this week. Now, one thing you got to remember is TVA is, one day they're pulling 60,000. I looked just a minute ago before I started shooting this. They're actually pulling about 60,000 this morning. And then tomorrow it may be like 12,000. So I assume that they're going to pull some water with this extreme heat. There's a lot of electricity running, people running their air conditioners, things like that. So I assume that they're going to pull some water this week. But, you know, you can tell when you're driving down the lake, if things are just stagnant and dead and hot. You just have that feeling, you know, man, these fish are not wanting to bite today. They're going to be extremely tough to catch. But if they're pulling water, don't forget about the staples. Crush 300, chartreuse and blue. That's the blue truce. The Nichols mini mag spoon I've talked about over and over. The big swim baits, the Ignite Frenzy. That's the 5-inch right there with a 3/4 ounce head. This is the Ignite 3/4 ounce head that I throw on the back of that bait. Here's the thing. If you fish with me, if you've watched any of my stuff at all in the past, the big baits that's what's going to set you apart at the end of the day. If you can get those big fish to trigger on those big baits. We're always going to throw the biggest baits that we've got on the deck first. Now, are they going to, you take this Ignite swim bait and wind it around out there all day long, you're going to get tired of throwing it because they're not on it that good. Now, that being said, if you pull up on a place and you find what you think is a school of fish, or they're up suspended and they look like they might bite a swim bait, and you throw that out there, if you pull up there and you catch one, it's going to be pretty quick. It's not a bait that you're not just going to keep throwing it. You're not going to keep winding it through there. Same goes with a crankbait. You'll know when you pull up on these places if these fish are wanting to bite. You'll know pretty quick if they're going to bite a crankbait, a spoon, or a swim bait. If it's not happening, it's going to happen pretty quick. If it's not happening, lay down and start your finesse approach, whether that's a big worm, drop shot, Nico rig, whatever. Don't forget about the big baits, though. If they're pulling some water, especially, be on your best stuff later on in the day. Now, don't expect to go out there and just wreck them. Now, there's going to be a handful of guys that get on these places, and you're going to catch a pretty good bag of fish. You may have to work on them, but I don't expect it to be lights out on just one or two places. I think you're going to have a milk run and just hit I preach that all the time. You've got to hit as many places as you can in a day. Now, that being said, I'm not 100% sure how many boats are going to be in these events. It may be wise, depending on what they're doing with water, whether it's moving or not, to get on a place. Because when you're fishing offshore, those are the trickiest tournaments, because you may leave a spot where you know that they might fire a little bit later and go check another place and there's a boat on it. And you come back to your other place and there's another boat on it. So be respectful on the water, first and foremost. There's enough fish to go around out there. That's why I believe that these two events, you're going to need to kind of rotate, have some shallow fish, have some deep fish, mix it up in between, cover a lot of water. The Texas rig has kind of been my best bait over the last couple weeks. This is the Busa ribbon tail on a Texas rig. You watched my last report. Not a lot's changed as far as baits, but the Busa ribbon tail, this is the Plum Dawn color. I throw that one a lot. Any of the blue fleck, plums, red apples, things like that this time of year on a Texas rig. 1/4 ounce head with a 5/0 hook. The Busa shaky worm on like a 1/4 ounce head. You can drag that around if you want to fish something a little bit slower. And then the Bambusa Nico rig with an 1/8 ounce on spinning tackle. That bait right there. That and a drop shot. The glitch, the Morning Dawn glitch. I mean, it's kind of, if you've watched any of my reports, it seems like the same baits, but they're still working. And then like a football jig, the Dirty Jigs football jig with a trailer on the back. Now, the thing about a football jig this time of year is you can drag it, you can hop it, there's a lot of different ways you can fish it. That's why I choose the football head. And you might want to this is a 3/4 ounce, you might want to downsize to like a half, 9/16, something like that. If they get up on top of that stuff a little bit shallower. But that's kind of it for the deep stuff. Now, I have played with 6 cents, the Abstract. This is the 18. This is a little bit smaller version. Now, I have that one rigged up. I played with it on a spinning rod just because it's a little bit it's a little bit lighter bait, and I've actually played with it on a drop shot and caught a handful of fish on it. This is not a bait. I have not jumped on it like a lot of people have, but I'm starting to experiment with different ones. Six sent me a handful of this bait here recently, and I've spent a little bit of time out there playing with it. Pretty cool little bait. And what I like about this size this time of year, that 18, the little bit smaller, is because a lot of these fish are on the emerald shiners, which are about that big right now. And if you get out on the main lake, you're going to start seeing all kinds of stuff in the water column. You'll see big balls of bait, big clouds of bait fish. You're going to see catfish. You're going to see carp. There's a lot happening in the month of July. When that water starts warming up, you see that every year. And I touched on this in my last report if you watched it. But it kind of starts making things a little bit tougher as far as being able to identify fish or schools of fish on your electronics. That's why I always say this time of year, don't be afraid to scan and look, but if they get in that shallower than 10 feet. I mean, just think, these fish have been pressured all summer long. For about 2 or 3 months now, they've had the crap beat out of them. So be careful where you idle. I always typically, some of the better quality fish that I've caught recently, I've caught on places that I've fished all summer long, but I'm not pulling up and graphing. I'm actually just pulling up and fishing. And that's due to pressure, and then this time of year, you know, they start getting up on that shallower stuff, and they're a little bit finickier up on that shallow stuff than they are when they get out there when they're fresh and deep. But, you know, the Shindo too, the minnow style baits, I would recommend downsizing because of the size of the bait right now. Now, we throw the 6-inch and the 7-inch all summer long on schools of fish, but now that the smaller bait has moved out onto some of the deeper places, that little bit smaller one, that's the 5-inch there, I would probably downsize my baits. Anything across the board, you know, don't be afraid to downsize this time of year. That's why the Nico Texas rig drop shot with a glitch on it, those baits are going to play, just because you're going to have to make those fish bite. They're not going to want to bite. You're going to find them. You're going to find schools. And don't think that you're going to come out here and find a ton of just big, fresh schools right now. Obviously, the fresh fish they're beat up. But don't be afraid to use your electronics and scan around too and look for schools of fish, because you're going to see them. They're just going to be busted up. They're going to be scattered out. And that's why the Texas rig and things like that start to play this time of year. There's been a topwater bite. I throw the Dogma and the Catwalk both from 6, whatever topwater you like, whatever you choose. And I shot a video here the other day, and I'll post that here later this week about the differences in the Dogma and the Catwalk. So be on the lookout for that. But any kind of walking style bait, fish are starting to school up. You're going to start seeing white bass come up, jumping. And then the largemouth usually are right in there mixed in with them a lot of times. I've got a couple places out there right now where they're coming up and they're starting to come up on the surface. I've not seen too much of that topwater. Just lay a topwater in your hand and just go fish it. Now, this time of year, early in the morning, a couple bites on top are going to be very crucial. If you can catch a couple first thing in the morning, I can't remember if you guys are fishing the 3-fish limit or 5-fish limit, but a couple of bites on top are going to go a long way from here on throughout the fall. So get up on those shallow places, look for that any kind of like washout up on the bank where there's a lot of like let's say some trees have laid down or some old stumps or something that you know of, or lay downs. There's going to be bait up around that stuff, and there's fish not far behind those. So that all being said, don't be afraid to cover water with a topwater and keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes peeled and look for those schoolers. And then the little swim bait too. This is just a Divine 3.2. That is about the right size right now for your bait fish. The Pro Shad, the Sexy Shad, just on a little 5/16, 3/16 ounce head, depending on what you're doing, if you're fishing around docks or brush or cover or whatever. But air temperature's warm. Not a whole lot of wind. I mean, we've had some storms coming through here. Water temperature's warm. It's July. It's hot. The bite is going to be tough, guys. Just know that ahead of time, that it's going to be extremely tough fishing out there for you for the next couple weeks. There's some fish to be caught. We're still catching. We're it's hit or miss. We're having some good mornings and some tougher mornings. But if I was to pick a couple of baits for this time of year, right now, I guess if I was to pick my top 3, number 1 would be a Texas rig worm, the Busa ribbon tail, Texas rig, drop shot with a glitch, something like that, something small profile, the Morning Dawn color. And then I would probably have to say a topwater, just because I have caught a handful of fish on top, just to, because if you can, like I say, if you can get a couple bites on top this time of year, super crucial. It just makes the day flow a lot easier. You don't have as much pressure on you by the end of the day. Hopefully you've got a decent bag of fish. But welcome to all you guys, the juniors, the high schoolers that are coming up next week. Welcome to Kentucky Lake. If you've never been here, the lake fishes a whole lot better than what I assume it's probably going to fish the next couple weeks. Don't get discouraged by what I'm telling you. I'm just telling you to be prepared for a tough tournament. north end of the lake. I know you guys are going out of Paris Landing. If you happen to be up in this neck of the woods on the north end of the lake, Hitec Marine, that's our local Vexus dealer. We do marine electronics installs, trolling motors, batteries, marine work, any kind of, if you have motor issues, anything that has to do with a bass boat. Hitec Marine right here up on the north end of Benton, Kentucky. Reach out to me, reach out to those guys. If you're in the area, you need something, please let us know. And then the guys next door to Hitec is Kentucky Lake Outdoors. Ethan, Ron, Jimmy, all those guys over there have done a great job keeping a great selection of tackle. Not only the products that I talk about here, but they've got an awesome selection of tackle up here on the north end of the lake. So be sure and come in, check out those guys. And if you guys are in the area, and you want to meet up sometime here on the north end of the lake, if you're up in this area, I can meet you up there at Hitec sometime. There may be a couple days that I'm up there, next week while you guys are in town. I'm not sure what that looks like as far as, if you have an off day or whatever. But if you in the area want to reach out about a trip, whether it's a bass fishing trip, tournament preps for the future, marine electronics training, any of those things, reach out to me, info@brandonhunterfishing.com, and I will see you guys on the water. Good luck to you.